Good morning, and thank you for joining us on this SAG-AFTRA live stream on YouTube. To stay informed about all of our live stream and video events, we invite you to subscribe to this channel. You can go ahead and do that right now. Today, we present the President's Task Force on Education, Outreach, and Engagement live stream, The Next Generation of Broadcasters. We'll be pausing throughout as we have with us Jaron Gilchrist and Mara Bassani, who are here to translate today's programming into American Sign Language. Jaron and Mara will be switching off periodically throughout today's presentation. The event will begin momentarily. If you have questions that you'd like to direct to today's guests, please email pteoe@sagaftra.org. That's pteoe@sagaftra.org. As a reminder, today's program is being recorded and you can watch the replay right here on SAG-AFTRA's YouTube channel, along with a lot more great content. Now, please give a warm welcome to today's host, SAG-AFTRA President Gabrielle Carteris.
Thank you, Pamela. Thank you so much. Welcome. Hello, everybody. I hope you're staying healthy and you're doing well. This is an incredible education and information panel that we put together today. It's Next Generation of Broadcasters. I'm very excited. In the discussion, you're going to have the opportunity to hear from media professionals who are actually currently working in major television and radio markets across the country. So you're going to get a chance to listen in on our guest speakers and just hear their discussion about their careers and answer some of the questions that you've submitted. Now, I know many of you are in school and you're here with us today because you're thinking about your futures and exploring future careers in broadcasting. So I commend you for taking advantage of this opportunity. We recently kicked off a week of Stop the Hate activities, and this panel was specifically curated as we realize it's important that the next generation of you understand the range of opportunities, organizations, and resources that are available to help you as you embark on your careers. Your backgrounds matter. Your experience matters. Your voice matters. We need you to be our collective voice of the future. Now, there's so much to unpack today. So as we cover topics such as landing your first job, opportunities available in front of the camera and behind the scenes, diversity and inclusivity in the industry, the importance of mentoring and networking, plus so much more. Whether you are a student majoring in broadcast journalism or communications, or just want to learn more about the profession, today's program is indeed something you will enjoy. For some of you, this may be a very first exposure to SAG-AFTRA, that's our union, or for that matter, to any union. So I invite you to visit our website at sagaftra.org. You can learn about all of our programs, areas of coverage, member benefits, and more. My true hope is that you leave here today and think of SAG-AFTRA as a resource and a future partner to you as you go forth to build your professional careers. We all need each other. So if you have questions that you want to direct to today's guests, you just need to email to pteoe, that's pteoe @sagaftra.org, pteoe @sagaftra.org. With that, I'm incredibly excited and honored to kick off today's panel discussion. But first, I want to introduce a man who actually needs no introduction. He is spectacular as a human being. What he does is very generous, and the time he gives to the members is quite meaningful into this union. So I want to welcome the incredible Bob Butler. Hi, Bob.
Hey, Gabby.
Bob is a general assignment reporter at KCBS Radio in San Francisco. He was a key member of the decorated Chauncey Bailey Project. He's been honored for his work, including a George Foster Peabody Award and a National Edward R. Murrow Award for his coverage of the housing crisis in New Orleans following Hurricane Katrina. Bob is committed to mentoring the next generation of journalists. He served as the 20th president of the National Association of Black Journalists, NABJ, from 2013 to 2015, and is now the broadcast vice president of SAG-AFTRA. So happy you're with us today, Bob, and so excited to hear the conversation. So thank you.
Thanks, Gabby. Thank you for having me. And before we get started, I want to give a special shout out to Susan Walker and the class at BU, which is watching. As somebody who was born in Chelsea and who spent my first years in Cambridge, it means a lot to me that you're watching. So hello, everybody. I went to school many, many years ago. I after moving from Pittsburgh, I moved home to California. I went to a community college in mass communications. And we used to have people come in and talk to us who are working in the industry. And I always wanted to know, what do I need to do to be able to do what you're doing? And they never could really tell me. They were talking about, well, you have to be able to write and you have to be able to do this and do that. But they didn't really hit right into what I should be doing while I'm in college in order for me to get a job. So that's what we're going to talk about today. What do you need to do while you're still in school to increase your chances of getting a job once you graduate, whether it is next month, whether it's in December, whether it's next year? There are things you can do in school to increase your chances. Now, we have a great panel today, a very diverse panel. First, I want to introduce Nina Moini, who's a reporter and host, Minnesota Public Radio, spent more than a decade working in radio and TV news. She's been very busy the last few weeks covering the Derek Chauvin trial, and now she's covering the Daunte Wright shooting. Welcome, Nina. Justine Waldman is an anchor at KRON 4 News in San Francisco. She went to the Newhouse School at Syracuse, began her career in Utica, and made stops in Fort Myers, Boston, and Philadelphia before joining KRON 4. James Santelli is a news producer for KDKA in Pittsburgh. He graduated from the Annenberg School at USC and began his career as a reporter in Youngstown, Ohio. And finally, Ashley Mackey, community journalist for KABC, ABC 7 Eyewitness News in Los Angeles. She has a BA from the University of Montana and a master's degree in sports journalism from Arizona State University, the Cronkite School. Welcome, everybody. And I'm going to just start right off. Nina, you went to Mizzou. And for those who don't know what Mizzou is, it's the University of Missouri at Columbia. Talk about what you were doing your last year in school to prepare you for the job you're doing now.
I'm sorry, you said the last year in school.
The last year in school, what were you doing to get ready for what you're doing now?
At the University of Missouri, we were fortunate that we had an NBC affiliate there that was actually owned and operated by our university, but it's KOMU TV, and it's what everybody in the area watched. So we were lucky to get sort of in the field experience and training. So I spent a lot of my senior year, I was on the TV track. I'm now a radio reporter, but I spent time kind of trying to make my tape better. I don't know if people still call it a tape, but we were still calling it a tape then, but it was like a DVD, or you would send it out. I know a lot of people spend a lot of time making websites. That was actually a part of my capstone. It's been about 10 years now, but that was part of our capstone project, was to sort of market ourselves and our work, and to have a website that someone could just quick go and check out all of our work. So we spent a lot of time doing that, and then a lot of time just trying to get better, particularly in the area of live reporting. And I think that's something that sometimes students don't have a lot of experience with right when they're graduating. But I'm excited to talk about that more, because I actually think that that's a skill that you can build every single day in life, just sort of walking around and talking to yourself and describing things, and sort of just becoming more comfortable with yourself and more natural. So that's what I was doing my last year at Mizzou. And then you wanted to talk a little bit about where I am now, or
you graduated from Mizzou, and
Yep.
now you're looking for a job.
Mm-hmm. So then I was my first job was actually in Fort Myers at NBC2 and ABC 7 News. I was a multimedia journalist, meaning, I would write and shoot and edit all of my own video, and then edit a story together. And it was 100 degrees out, and shooting my own stand-ups, and then run out on set and front this story. Hardest job I've ever had, probably the hardest one I ever will. That's the good part, I think, in retrospect about first jobs, is they're not going to be perfect. Probably they're not going to be your favorite, but they're sure going to teach you a lot, and teach you a lot about yourself. And there's really only, I think, one way to learn in this industry, and it's by doing. So I did that for a couple of years, and then I came home to where I grew up here in Minnesota. My long O probably gave that away, but I became a morning reporter here at the CBS owned and operated affiliate WCCO TV. I worked there for 4 years, and about 4 years ago, I decided to make a switch to Minnesota Public Radio. And I mean, we can get into all that maybe later, but for me, it was just sort of more about having more context and storytelling, and reaching greater communities, and being in the nonprofit side of things versus the commercial side of things. And that's something people don't always really talk about when you're in school. Like, how does all of that work? How do we make our revenue, ad sales? So in learning about that, I decided to make a change. And now I'm a reporter and a host. And most recently, Bob mentioned, we're working the trial of Derek Chauvin and the killing of Dante Wright now. So it's been a really difficult time here. But we're doing a podcast called In Front of Our Eyes, and it's about the Chauvin trial and the life of George Floyd. And it's been about 10 years, but I am at a place now where I'm really grateful to be working where I'm working, and just trying to provide that local context and more in-depth context that we can provide, since we're the local news reporters, even though this is an international story. So that's me. Thanks for having me.
Much. Justine, you're an anchor. So you're sitting there on the anchor desk. Talk about your journey. You went to Syracuse. Your last year in school, you're getting ready for a job. What are we doing?
Well, I did a lot of internships, which helped me see all the different roles that you can play within a news department, both on air and behind the scenes, producing, writing, directing, being a reporter, a photographer, an anchor. And I think I'm unusual in that I knew I always wanted to be a news anchor. Like, since I was 5 years old, I had grandparents that were in the news business. So I had been in newsrooms growing up my whole life. I remember seeing them all typing away on typewriters back in the day. So I had a passion from a young age for this. So I think that I don't think that matters for everyone, but for me, I was pretty focused on what it is I wanted to do. So I did lots of internships while in college. Every semester, every summer, I was always working in different newsrooms, which helped me see all the different jobs that could happen, because I think that some of the success in a newsroom is it's a team, and I love team sports and I'm pretty competitive. So that's also why I was drawn to this business, is that people really have to work together, and you can't just have one person doing everything, though one person at this point really knows how to do everything. And then I got my first job in Utica, New York. I had to send out VHS tapes. We didn't even have links or DVDs back in my day. So I had to send out about 50 tapes in order to get my first job. So it's a little bit of a grind in the beginning. And I think part of what helps you get a job is that you've met people in all sorts of newsrooms and in schools. And that's also why I think internships are so important, is because everybody knows everybody in this business. Nina just said she worked in Fort Myers, so we would have some connections there together. James actually knows somebody that I work with at KRON in San Francisco, which I only found out through Instagram recently. So there's a lot of connections to be made. And once I was after Utica, then I went to Fort Myers, then to Philadelphia and Boston, and then back to Philadelphia for a little bit. And now I've been in San Francisco for 10 years. And at this point, I can do everything. I one-man banded in San Francisco. So it's not something that you escape as you move up in the ranks. It is something that I actually started to do in my job here in San Francisco, which is a pretty big market. But being able to have all that experience in my storytelling, in the crafting of my story, as far as enterprising it, driving myself there, shooting it, writing it, editing it, presenting it, even setting up my own live shot. All those things I learned all those skills back in the day in school and in my first internships. But now I get to sit behind the anchor desk, but I kind of miss being outside a little bit. The fresh air.
You said the word internship a couple of times. The importance of internships. Could you talk about that?
I think that they expose you to everything that the newsroom has to offer. I mean, the real core of what we do is storytelling and writing, and learning how to write a story for broadcast, and even learning what is a story, what is a soundbite, what are the questions I want to be asking people when I'm out on a story or when I'm listening to a press conference coming in. What is it that we used to say, if people were watching the news and they were cutting their carrots, what would make them look up from making dinner to watch television? And that's the emotion. Now it's like, what's going to get them off their phones or their iPads in order to look up and be engaged in what you're talking about. Those are all things I learned in internships. You learn a lot in school. You're also learning how to be like a human in school and making and building connections. But when you're in a newsroom and you're working and you're feeling that lifeblood, seeing what makes all the parts pump together, I think you take a lot out of that. So I very much valued my internships that I had in newsrooms all across the country, not just in my hometown of Chicago.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to understand that when you do an internship, it's not just you learning what's going on in the newsroom. It's also the people in that newsroom learning you.
Mm-hmm.
And if anybody that calls me and asks me to help them and they say they interned at, say, at KRON, I'm going to pick up the phone and call Justine. Justine, tell me about this intern. And if Justine says, oh man, they were great, we loved them. Or she might say, I don't really know them that well. That's a kiss of death. Okay, I'll tell you. So it's very important. Plus, everybody you meet in a newsroom at an internship knows somebody who works someplace else. And that is a way to possibly get in. Ashley, you went to Arizona State. But before that, you played tennis at Montana. And after graduating from Montana, you went on the tour, right?
Yes, I got a, sorry.
Did you ever play Serena?
No, I didn't play Serena, but I was in one of her commercials, which is, make sure to put that in fine print on my resume because I love that little factoid. But I played tennis starting at 7 years old, and I earned a full ride scholarship to Division I tennis at the University of Montana, Big Sky Country. And it wasn't really until my junior year that I found out like broadcast journalism is what I wanted to do. So that's when I declared my major, my bachelor's degree, and I graduated. But I wasn't quite ready to let tennis go, my first passion. And so then I played for 2 years semi-professionally, traveled. And then once I was, over that, I was like, okay, now I've been away from journalism for 2 years. And anybody who's in the business knows that from day to day, it changes. So 2 years out of journalism, I just felt like I needed a little bit more, like a refresher. And so that's when I decided to apply to grad school, and I got into Arizona State University Walter Cronkite School, and I did 2 years there to earn my master's degree in sports journalism.
And now you're working at home in Los Angeles, covering your old neighborhood. How'd you pull that off?
Every day I ask myself how I did that. But I mean, it's not unlike what everybody else has said so far. It's about the relationships you're making. It's about, understanding, setting a goal, and then trying to do everything in your power to fine tune all your skills and reach that goal. I was involved in like 5 different clubs while I was at ASU, just trying to take a little bit from everything and really fine tune my craft. And, I TA'd for deans, and, anytime I had questions, I was in the office, I was making sure I was asking questions, asking for help when I needed it. And I think that's really, how I was able to make some of those relationships, which, like we've been saying, is key. Networking is key, I think. And they saw my drive, I believe. And that's how I got put in this situation where it's like, oh, I know somebody who might be good for that job. And now I'm here.
And you're covering, your old neighborhood, covering different stories. I mean, what's your average day like?
Yeah, so I'm a part of the community journalist program here at KABC. I cover Inglewood community and some surrounding communities, South Bay, Gardena, Hawthorne, Lenox. I'm fortunate because I was born in Inglewood. I went to middle school in Inglewood, and that actually also helped too when applying for this specific position because, I have kind of roots here already. But my day-to-day is great because it's never the same. I work as an MMJ also. So I shoot, edit, write, produce all my own things, set up all my interviews and stories and things like that. And even go live every once in a while. So anything could happen from day to day. So it's really, there's no rhyme or reason to it. And it's great. It keeps it fun and keeps me on my toes. And yeah, I like it.
Yeah. So I've talked to a number of college classes, and I always ask who wants to be a reporter and an anchor, and most of the hands go up. And then I say, who wants to tell them what to do? And I get a lot of blank stares. And that's why, James, I left you for last, because you work behind the scenes as a news producer. Tell us exactly what that means.
Sure. Well, the quickest way I explain it to especially friends and family is everything that is going on while an anchor is talking, that's pretty much the producer's job. The video that they're talking over, the graphics that are appearing on screen with them, the words that they are saying, and all the order that it's all in. That's the job of the producer. So it's certainly a big hill to climb every day. You start off with a blank rundown, except for, a little bit of templating that we have, and you make an hour of news out of it every day. And just a bit of my background, I came at it, as Bob mentioned, as a reporter in Youngstown, Ohio. And I was there as an MMJ for 2 years. And so Justine and Nina and Ashley all talked about how much work it takes to go and shoot and write and edit and live shot and do everything yourself. And it was really an eye-opening experience for me. I enjoyed covering Youngstown, but it also made me realize that I wanted to be back home in Pittsburgh, which is not far, only an hour away. But I did want to be back in Bob's old stomping grounds here in Pittsburgh. And I knew that it wasn't going to be right away as an on-air reporter in Pittsburgh. It is a bigger market. But I did do some producing there in Youngstown, and I enjoyed that aspect of it. I enjoyed the writing and matching to the video and everything that goes around an anchor, particularly when I would produce my own shows that I would anchor in Youngstown. I thought this could be an opportunity for me. And so I applied to KDKA, my hometown station that I watched growing up, and was able to get this job. And I'm still here almost 4.5 years later.
So now, how many anchors, reporters are at your station?
Oh gosh, we have probably around a little under a dozen anchors, and reporters, probably close to 20 all told.
So that's 32 people. How many other people work in the newsroom behind the scenes?
Oh gosh, dozens. We actually have, in our break room at KDKA, we kind of have a wall of headshots of faces of everybody that works in the station. And it's divvied up. On one side, you have kind of the sales and administration, and there are dozens of people that do that. And on the other side, you have photographers, you have studio crew, you have, people who are working the assignment desk, web editors, and it's dozens. It's probably a good, 50 or 60 people just on, behind the scenes, crew, photographers, editors, all of that. So it like I think it was Nina who mentioned, it takes a lot of teamwork. It is absolutely a team job. I mean, if you're talking 50 people, that's double the size of a Major League Baseball roster. It is absolutely a team sport.
Yeah, and a lot of people, when they watch the news, they see the anchors, the reporters, and that's what they want to do. Nobody ever talks about what happens behind the scenes. The producers, the editors, the floor directors, although there's not much that because of computers, but there's all these other folks, the photographers. You can shoot your own video, but you got to do a live shot. It's hard to do a live shot by yourself. I mean, the technology is there, but there's so many other folks that are out there, and those are good jobs. And those are jobs that can be careers. So you need to think about what else you can do besides being a reporter. Talk to me about the importance of writing.
Oh my goodness, it's essential. It's everything. We as MMJs, we have to, come up with our own stories, our own, words to describe what's happening. And if you are interested in becoming a producer, you are doing more writing than you're doing anything else. You are writing, 20, 30 stories just for a single newscast. And I think what you will find is everybody who's on air kind of has their own voice, their own way of speaking. You may have an anchor who has been around for 30, 35 years. We certainly do at KDKA. And those anchors have a particular way of saying things. They don't use contractions like don't. They may express words in different sentences, or you may have a younger anchor who is comfortable being more conversational. They'll say with contractions. They'll use certain terminology that a slightly more distinguished anchor wouldn't find that appropriate to do. So we all have our own voices in how we write. And so being a producer, if that's your first job, you get a crash course in finding out that there are so many ways to write a story and so many ways to do it well. There's no one correct way of doing something.
Yeah, Nita, you worked in commercial, now public radio. Is there a difference in the writing?
Well, I think it depends on what medium. I often miss video. I love radio, and I love that we can sort of take our time with things and we're not beholden to commercial break at this time. And, your stories can only be 90 seconds. But at the same time, say there's like a natural disaster, say, you're never really going to be, in my opinion, able to describe what you're seeing as well as you could with video. So I really miss that. And it's almost trickier in a way to try to describe your surroundings when you are writing for, say, like a podcast or radio. But I don't think that it's that different. I don't have a lot of experience with print writing, but I think that would be different and challenging for me. As I always joke that in broadcast, it's like use the least amount of words, be the most conversational, write in a way that, like a 7th grader could understand. So I always say that that's kind of how I was brought up to write, was just keep it simple and, use the video. Don't write over your video if the video could speak for itself. So I had to make that adjustment when I went to radio. And it's been a little difficult, but I think the basic rules are the same. And I think that Justine touched on it, that it's just getting to the heart of the emotion of a story. And I don't think that changes no matter what medium you're in.
If you're just joining us and you have a question, you can send it to pteoe@sagaftra.org, and we'll try to get that question answered. Justine, I had a question for you. I'm sure that you've had some pretty bad writing in the scripts that are given to you. I don't want to ask about that. We don't want to embarrass anybody. Talk about the glamour of your job.
I'm sorry, the what?
The glamour.
Oh, the glamour.
I watch you on TV, you're sitting up there, you're looking great, you're an anchor. Got to be a glamorous position.
Yeah, well, I'm sweating a little underneath when that's happening. But that's some of the smoke and mirrors of it. That's my job. Things could be falling apart behind the scenes. There's no video. This live shot we use the word died because you think you're going to go live somewhere and, they're having a technical issue in the field and you think you're going to them next and it's not going to happen, or the weather computers all just crashed, or a fire alarm is going off in the background. It's my job to stay cool, calm, collected, and to just make you all think everything's fine. There's no problems. It's like the swan analogy, like you're on the water and they're so graceful on the top and underneath their legs are pedaling like this to get them to stay afloat. That's part of what it is. I will say, like, some people, a lot of what people ask me is like, who picks out your clothes? Who does your hair? Who does your makeup? There's none of that. That does not happen. And I know that's what people see. And that's part of, the allure of it, is this glamour to what it is, but it's a lot of sweat, a lot of tears. And I will say with what James said, that he does a lot of the writing of the 50 stories to put into the newscast. As an anchor, I do a lot of rewriting of the 50 stories that go into the newscast. Some of that is adding my tone and how I would say it. Also, some of it is using my experience as a journalist. Maybe there's some background to a story that I can add because I've covered it. I've been there. I know a little bit about it. Maybe some of it's just shortening it and just using words that I would also feel more comfortable saying. So it's not just sitting there and someone's rolling a teleprompter and you're just reading it. I'm very engaged and active in the storytelling that is happening within our newscast, including the order in which the stories are told, what the graphics might look like, or the information that's on them. So you don't just roll in there and someone puts your hair in curlers and put some lip gloss on you and you turn it on. All the experience that I had starting at those internships has given me some perspective on what is happening so I can present the news to people with my voice and with KRON's voice and from all the little places that I've been along the way. So I don't know if I would describe it as glamorous. There's certainly nothing glamorous. As a reporter, talking to the victim of a horrific crime or someone who has just lost a family member or whose house is just burned to the ground, that's not glamorous. That's the emotion, but being able to portray it in a way that people can connect to it, I feel very privileged to do that.
And can I just add to what Justine is saying? She's absolutely right. The best anchors do a lot of rewriting. And the other thing I'll say is I'll use a newspaper term, which is the managing editor. The best anchors, if you want to be an anchor somewhere in your career, you want to think like a managing editor. You want to be able to talk with your producers and reporters and figure out, is this story in the right place? Are we telling this in the right way? Do we have all the facts that we need to get this across properly? To be frank, you need to be smart and reading up on things that are going on. You don't want to go on the air and have, a place, on the map that you just don't know how to say that place's name, especially if it's in your market, because you will get phone calls about saying the name of the place wrong. So if you are in conversation with other reporters and producers and anchors and figuring out the story and the best way to tell it, being that managing editor is the way to go above and beyond as an anchor and as a reporter as well.
Yeah. What was the place? Aliquippa?
Oh, Aliquippa.
I used to be a directory assistance operator in Pittsburgh, so I know all that. When I talk about the glamour of the business, I talk about working the morning shift. Getting up at 1:30 in the morning to go to work on Saturday, on Sunday. So you might want to go out and party Friday or Saturday night, but you got to get up at 1:30 in the morning to go to work. There is no glamour there. There is no glamour, and maybe you can talk about this, Nina. There's no glamour in going out to cover a fatal fire at 5:30 in the morning in January in a blizzard.
And I've done all those things. There's not. And I think that, it's for every person to decide really what motivates you. And I think that it is a little bit different for everybody. And, it's okay. I guess if a lot of people will say right out of the gate, I want to anchor, and they'll go somewhere for their first job where they can immediately anchor. And that's great. Do whatever you want to do. But I do think that a great deal of reporting experience tends to make anchors better. And that way, your community. You have been out there at 5 a.m. covering really emotional, raw, horrible stories right after the fact. And, you encounter people often on the worst day of their life, sometimes on the best day of their life, but really often on their worst days. So it's a great responsibility. And what I've found is that people whose motivations are not from a place of public service tend to get burned out really quick, because it's not the highest paying jobs. It's not the easiest situations. You're not used to, you're coming from a college atmosphere where it's professors and teachers and people are really engaged with you and they're giving you feedback and like they really care. And then that isn't always the case when you go to your first, TV station. People aren't, how are you doing, Nina? Like, how do you feel like you're developing and growing? Let me look at your stuff. You have to advocate for yourself, really every step of the way. So there are so many lessons to be learned. But yeah, I definitely think that if the motivation is there to be of service to your community, that can get you through some pretty dark times. But it is hard, and some of that stuff does stay with you. And I'm glad that we're getting to a place as an industry where we can talk a little bit more about some of the trauma and some of the stuff that's involved just in our work.
Yeah, we face a tremendous amount of trauma in our business because we are often on the scenes of those really horrible stories and talking to or trying to talk to the family of somebody who was just, shot by the police, or somebody who just died in an accident. Actually, one of the keys to being a good reporter is knowing your community, building your sources, knowing who to go to at City Hall, who to go to at the police department. Do you think you have an advantage because you grew up in Inglewood on those things?
I think I have an advantage in that once people learn that I'm from Inglewood, they're a little bit more receptive. But as far as making those contacts, when I was out of journalism for 2 years, I was not in Inglewood for longer than that. So when I came back, it was pretty much starting from ground zero. I mean, I was fortunate. The only really upper hand that I had starting this job being from LA is that I could stay with family and didn't have to pay rent, which is a huge upper hand. But I was still from scratch, as far as, reaching out to the mayor's office and making those contacts at City Hall and joining those Facebook groups, those community Facebook groups, trying to find stories. And it was tough. It was very stressful because, you got to feed that beast. So when I'm like fumbling around trying to put together a story, it got a little stressful. But I will say, as I was immersed more in the community and as I did start to make these contacts, it got a lot easier. It wasn't me scrounging Twitter or checking my Google alerts every 3 times a day, really, because those things come in constantly. But it was more people reaching out to me, right? Because I've done this story and they've seen this story, and now they have a story idea. So it definitely gets easier.
Yeah, you have a story idea. They have a story idea, which often is not really a story, right?
You have to filter through some for sure. But every once in a while, I'm like, okay, I can work with this.
So we're going to be taking questions shortly, but I wanted to ask each of you. We're all members of SAG-AFTRA. Did you know what that was when you were in school, Ashley?
Yes, I knew what that was. Like I said, I did a few commercials so for tennis. So I knew about SAG.
What is it? How has it made your life easier? It hasn't made your life easier as a reporter.
It's been great. It's like having how do I say? It's just having a community, an endless well of resources, whether it's classes, whether it's you want to talk to somebody in a different position that you want to learn more about, whether it's you just have questions or you want to talk, or you're looking for more resources that are not easily available or you haven't been able to find. It's been super helpful.
James, you weren't in SAG-AFTRA in your first job, right?
Correct. The first job was actually a union through NABIT, through CWA.
Through NABIT, okay. So now you're in SAG-AFTRA. Benefits for you as a producer?
Well, I can speak specifically about how important it's been, because when I first started this job, it was not a union job. The on-air talent was unionized through SAG-AFTRA. The behind the scenes talent, photographers, crew, they were through, why am I blanking on the?
IBW?
Yes, thank you. But we were not as producers. And so through the past 3 or 4 years, we started to realize there were a lot of things about the job that we loved, but there were a lot of protections that we weren't granted. For instance, just at will firing. There was no sort of recourse if you were to lose your job. No overtime being paid, no turnaround time pay, no guarantees of how many producers would even be staffed at any given time. So we got together, a few of us producers, and gathered more together, both on air, TV producers, I should say, web producers, digital, which is CBSN now, and sports producers, and we decided to unionize through SAG-AFTRA, and it was very exciting. We went public back in August, and we're right now in our contract negotiations with CBS, talking about some of those issues that I brought up, but also just determining what kind of workplace we want to have, what most benefits the people that we serve, the stories that we want to tell, and making sure that people in Pittsburgh are getting the best quality broadcast journalism possible.
Now, Justine, when you got your first job in Utica, you had to sign a contract, right?
I did sign a contract.
Do you know what you were signing?
My life away? No, I did not. I just, at the time, honestly, I was so happy to be just having a job. I was even just surprised someone was paying me to be doing what I was doing. They weren't paying me that much, but it was a shock at the time. The union has helped most recently in helping secure us getting vaccines for coronavirus. That they advocated very hard for us to get that accomplished. So I'm very grateful for that. And also with doing a lot of safety procedures and protocols to keep us healthy at work. The union was instrumental in making sure there were cleaning supplies and that we were spaced apart and that there were barriers and not as many people are in the newsroom. They hold the business, your newsroom, which is a company and they're trying to make money, they hold them accountable for protecting the employees. So our union was so helpful in getting that done for all of us. And also we deal with some safety issues out in the field. Our equipment is very valuable, and especially in the San Francisco Bay Area, that we are targeted a lot. And there's been some incidents where reporters have had their, cars broken into, equipment stolen, and our union helped us. Yeah, at gunpoint. So the union has helped us get security guards to come out with us in neighborhoods where you wouldn't necessarily think are unsafe, just having some protection with you so you can focus on your job, which is so encompassing and takes so much energy and focus, and that you can focus on doing the work and their work being on protecting you so you can do your job.
Nina, I asked the question about contracts because most people don't know what a contract looks like, don't know what's in it. When you signed your first one, did you have a clue what you were signing?
No, not at all. I was just like Justine said, I was so excited to get a job. And when a lot of us, we were younger working there, many people then wanted to leave. They didn't want to stay the whole 2 years. And so they had to, deal with buyouts, and you're already not making very much. So that's, a significant amount for people. But, I've been in the union now for 8 years because at WCCO, they were in the union. And then by the time I got to NPR, they were in the union. And it's just a level of protection. It just comes down to that. I just echo everything Justine said. I'm fortunate that I work somewhere now where it's not, they really value safety and they don't, but not everybody's that lucky. And sometimes when you are younger and you're starting out and you just feel like just grateful to be there, you're going to be in, they're going to ask you to be in some situations that are just unsafe. And if you're alone, if you're an MMJ, it's really hard to say no to that and to feel as though you're not going to be retaliated against. So that level of, just protection and knowing that there's that net, and James's point too about just firing folks. It's not like that because of our union. It's not like that. And then they'll have to work with people and, because sometimes you get hired onto a job and maybe you weren't ready. I don't think I was ready for my first job, and I wasn't kind of at a place that I needed to be. But all you can hope for is that you go somewhere where they're willing to work with you and take into account your age and experience and have some of that mentorship and some of that feedback. Otherwise, it can get a little dicey, and then you feel every day like you're at risk of just, they're going to walk in and they're going to pull you off the anchor desk for no reason, just because they felt like it that day, or they're, so I'm fortunate that in my decade of reporting, most of those years I've been in the union.
It's very important to understand that while, it might look glamorous and all that, this is a business. these companies we work for, they want to make money. And one way they try to make money is to pay us as little as they can. And they want to sign you up. So if you're watching this and you're going to be going out to get a job soon and you're going to probably get a contract to sign, you won't know what's in the contract, but you can call SAG-AFTRA. We can look at the contract for you free of charge, even if you aren't a member, and we'll tell you what you're signing. We'll explain things like liquidated damages, like you can't leave the contract early, otherwise you have to pay them money. Non-competes, where I can hire you, but then they fire you, but because of the non-compete, you cannot work in that market for another year, which means you have to move. These are the things you need to know in signing a contract. Very important that you know what your rights are, and we can help you explain these things to you, like I said, free of charge. You can find us at sagaftra.org, and you can find the local office to call, and we can help you out. Now, we're at that time to start taking questions, but very quickly, give me one thing that these students should be doing right now to help get them get a job. Nina, go ahead.
Well, it's not like an immediate tangible thing. Well, I guess it is. I think that one of the most challenging parts of this industry and this type of work is that you constantly have to put yourself outside of your comfort zone. And that means cold calling people on the phone, not sending a text to initiate a conversation with someone who could become a source. So I feel like nowadays there are so many ways to avoid talking to people that I would just encourage everybody to go to places that you wouldn't normally go. Just learn about people, learn about stuff that might sound initially boring because you're going to be doing a lot of that. What's going on with my city council? What's going on with their budget? I mean, those stories are all coming. I did not have a lot of experience with that kind of day-to-day turn storytelling, but the more you can learn and be someone who observes your community and reaches out to people who aren't like you or who you don't know, the better, I think.
Thanks. Ashley, your number one tip for people that want to do what you're doing right now.
I would say try to be as versatile as possible. Have multiple skills because, I think like we've all on the panel have said, we started one job and now we're maybe doing another job, or now we're doing 5 jobs at one time. So be able to do all of those jobs, or at least like have some type of understanding about what goes into those jobs. Okay.
Justine.
I would say the most important thing is to be reading and watching the news so you know what's going on, not only in your local community, your local news. That's where news starts, is at a local level. That's where it begins. And then also national news, and try to get a wide variety of voices and sources. So you're seeing not only what makes a story, what is a story, but also who are people talking to, and who are the people in the community who are making news. Even now in college, I think that's what people should be doing, is building up on that curiosity that's happening in your community.
And finally, James.
The first job I got, it was about 6 months after graduation, and it was at a station that I did not know existed when I graduated, but it was only an hour from home in Pittsburgh. So I would say if you are a junior or a senior about to graduate, or in grad school about to graduate, physically take out a piece of paper and write down 10 or 15 either stations, or if you're looking to get into sports, minor league sports teams, or any other entity that you think, yeah, I would like to work for them, write them down, literally write the list, and then figure out, what's their job portal? How do they, take in applications? Because I think if I had done that and just written out which stations are within 100 miles of Pittsburgh, I would have saved myself a whole lot of time, a whole lot of grief.
Yeah, the one thing that Google is your best friend nowadays looking for a job. You can Google a station anywhere and find out information. You can get their phone number. You can call the station. If you're applying for a job, you can find out who does the hiring. And there's something called the Television Designated Market Area, Television DMA. It's a list put out by Nielsen. It's every television market in the country. There's 210 of them. Markets 100 to 210 will give you your first job right out of college with no experience. But you need to know what those stations, what those are. You can look up Boise TV stations. It'll give you a list of TV stations. These are the things you can do. So we are actually have run over our time. We need to open up for some questions. Madam President, back to you.
Thank you, Bob. You did not run over time. You did great. It makes me want to be a journalist. I'm thinking, hearing your story. So thank you so much that you are in the right place. I wanted to just say something really quickly because I was thinking about, I think Justine, when you were talking about the protections and in your workplace, and you really are our frontline workers. It is something that I feel that was not really talked about enough out there in the ether this last year, as you were out there in the front lines, making sure that we were informed and helping us get through a time that was incredibly, for everybody, so challenging. And I want to say thank you, but it was very important to make sure that you got the protections you needed and to be able to get those vaccines. I'm glad that you felt that you had that protection, because it's been a hard time. And I cannot say how grateful I am that you guys do what you do. So I just wanted to share that. I know our members who are not broadcasters share this as well, but you should hear it out loud from everybody. So that being said, we have lots of questions. Some of them may seem a little bit close to things you've said earlier, but they're coming in. So we want to make sure that if somebody missed something, they can get it. I'm interested in hearing this, something that somebody put forward, is how helpful is it to have a social media presence? I see many of you have accounts associated with your network, but if I'm just starting out, I don't have this affiliation. How should I approach this? I want to add on that, if you can talk about, you mentioned contracts, Bob. So just for a moment, when people can talk after their social media thing, talk about how they should look at this, or somebody can mention it, how they should be looking at this, sometimes being suggested, or what it's being presented as in their contracts, and what the union is trying to help protect them from. Was that clear when I just said that? Yeah.
Well, social media presence is key. And nowadays, it used to be a time where they would hire you just because you were good and you looked good and you sounded good. A lot of times, companies now, they want your Twitter followers, they want your Facebook friends, they want to build that audience that you already have. And I don't have a really huge social media following, but I'm sure others do. So I'll leave it there. Anybody else want to tackle that?
I'll go. Part of some of our grading while I was at Arizona State was our social media presence. We had to be able to maintain. They encouraged that we shared on our social medias, our stories, and a lot of that I'm taking into now. I manage. Yes, it's a station account, and that's I have ABC7 in my bio and everything like that, but I'm still using those same tips and tricks that I was using, that I learned in college, to now to try and build my social media following continuously. So I think it's very important.
Yeah, one of the things, some of the stations, they want you to give them your username and password for your social media accounts, and it's very important that you know what you're doing, because sometimes you can't get that back. You might come in with 5,000 Twitter followers and the station takes them over. We now put in our contracts whether they can do that or not. And we're trying to get that in all of our contracts. It's very important. Yes,
and that's really what I wanted the audience listeners to know about, is that there are protections you can put into your contract to stop that from happening. And that's when Bob offered earlier, if you get a contract, the union will look at your contract. I would advise that, because they can point out to you things that might feel later on like your rights are being taken, that you didn't realize that by signing it. And it's really important to have that clarity. But social media is so big. I don't know if anybody else wants to talk about social media. Has that been a hindrance for them or helpful? Is it something that, or is it a non-conversation starter? Doesn't matter.
I just wanted to add quick that, when you are starting out, I would recommend that whatever, Facebook or Twitter that you had in like high school, I would recommend doing a new one. Because I mean, you just want to be, I think when you're starting out, super professional, and people aren't getting a pass these days. People will look you up, so it doesn't matter if you were 19 and you said something political in college. I think all of that has to go. And I think nowadays, I felt this more when I was working in TV, but it's like this race to like have all this personality and like share all this stuff about yourself. And I think that when you're starting out, for me personally, I think keeping it professional is really key. And you don't have to be, if you're in a program where you don't produce a bunch of stories, that's okay. You can still be a consumer of news, and you can still be retweeting news. And I just want to encourage everyone to just be really careful with social media. I've seen a lot of people get in trouble nowadays.
You can crash and burn quickly when they look up, you apply for a job, they look you up on social media, and there you are with your friend in a cloud of smoke. It's like, it might have been fun in high school, but that's a no-no nowadays.
Yeah, nothing is private. If you put it out there, it's out there.
Thank you for sharing that. I wanted people to really be able to hear that. So Rebecca Damon is our National Executive Vice President, is going to be doing this with us. I'm sorry, earlier, Rebecca, I did not announce you, and thank you for being with us. So if you want to take the next question, that would be great.
Oh, that's totally fine, Gabrielle. It's terrific to be here and to hear this discussion. We've been talking, as was mentioned by Gabrielle and others earlier, about just, the changing of the landscape and pipelines of decision makers and who's making those decisions at stations and all that kind of stuff in terms of hiring and otherwise. One of the things that came up that we're, looking at and trying to understand better, and I think the audience is really interested in, is because you are truth tellers, you guys are the representatives of our culture. Are there ways that we as SAG-AFTRA, or ways as people that are coming into the field, can really help push that conversation forward, given at the time that we live in?
James, why don't you take that?
It's a really good question. It's what people say when they're not quite sure how to answer it, right? No, I think that
That's interesting.
it's been a very productive past year in kind of expanding the kind of perspectives that are brought to the table by journalists. We are the fact givers and the fact bearers, sure, but we don't come into any story, any station, any job just as like completely emotionless robots with no like past experience or past knowledge. We all bring that to the table. So I think what's been great about the past year has been seeing where diversity of personalities, diversities of viewpoints, and diversities of past experience has been embraced as something that makes our journalism better. We realize that, we're not just going to be faceless, like fact spewing robots, and nor would our audience want us to be. We all bring our own perspectives to the table and our own knowledge and experience. And I think we've seen over the past year, there's an embrace of that. There's the idea that we need to cover our communities as best we can. And the way we do that is by having a team of reporters and journalists and overall crew that looks like the community that we cover, that brings the sort of experiences that makes it a more worthwhile product, a worthwhile service for the community that's out there.
Thanks, James. What about anybody else? Nina or Ashley, Justine, what do you think?
I would just add, and I feel like I already talked a bunch, so if someone else wants to go, but I think we are in this age of disinformation, and I don't know if that's quite where the question was going and talking about truth telling, but one thing that I've noticed is that, especially in the past 4 or 5 years, you really have to put your own ego aside, and you have to be really thick-skinned, and you have to realize that, at the end of the day, we're performing a service to the public, and it's sort of on us to make sure that we're explaining and being more transparent about how we do our work. So like at NPR News, around the election, we had an entire disinformation, what's real, what isn't, like explaining campaign that we did. And, maybe that's not the main focus of whatever newsroom that somebody's in, but you can still do things like talk to students and be out there in the community. And ultimately, it's on us to make sure that we're just being more transparent, because there's so much going on out there that people can read that's untrue, and people's opinions are so polarized right now. So you have to be conscious of that. But you're going to get nasty emails from all sides. And someone once told me that probably means you're doing it right if everybody is emailing, but it doesn't make it easier. Covering the Derek Chauvin trial has been just full of all types of just vitriolic stuff that people will send your way, unfortunately. But at the end of the day, you have to shut down your own ego and just be like, I'm doing a service to you. Here's how I can explain it. Okay, it's going too far. Now I'm going to block you, or I'm not going to respond. But it's a skill that over time, it doesn't stop hurting, because you are trying so hard and we're all understaffed and we don't have resources. But ultimately, it's our job. So it's not like we can go out there and, get into it with people, even though we may want to sometimes.
I would also like to add and connect that back to the last question. I feel like social media can be a really good humanizing tool. Because then you don't become the media, right? That you have your own personal profile. You're able to show yeah, I have a Labradoodle just like you, or, I like puppies. You can really humanize yourself by using social media. And sometimes I even go as far as to do behind the scenes work, like, oh, I'm writing, now I'm shooting. This is so-and-so who I just interviewed, and introduce them on IG, on your IG story or something like that. So I think social media can be a great way to humanize yourself, because a lot of times I feel like when people take that stance as the media is this or the media is that, they're not looking at individual journalists. And that's why they're able to kind of generalize the media.
Right. I think that's always the risk, right? When anything is not, when you don't see the humanity in it, when you kind of just name it, that's why it's really a problem to go and just make a blanket statement about people who do news, right? Or whatever. We need to be specific about the people we're watching and listening. You guys this is wonderful. There's so many things that I wrote down notes through this whole thing. There's just not going to be time. I'm going to go to the questions that are really here. But one came in is, I'm going to be a senior next year at Rutgers University, New Brunswick, and I still have yet to get an internship. It's been rejection after rejection. I'm scared that if I don't get one soon, I won't be able to get a job after graduation. Do you have any advice on how to push through this rejection? P.S. I want to be an anchor in the entertainment industry.
First thing I would tell you is keep applying. Find out which companies are accepting interns, because some companies don't accept them anymore because there were some issues. And get rid of the notion of being an entertainment anchor. Be a reporter first. If you learn how to be a news reporter, you can do anything. You can do sports, you can do entertainment, you can, do the red carpet. But too many people, they lock themselves into, I want to just do this. When I got my first, I wanted to be a DJ on the radio. And in college, the first chance they gave me to get on the air was doing the news. And that was in 1977, okay? And here I am in the news still 40 some years later. What you may want to do may not be what you end up doing. So if you want to be a news reporter, do that first, learn how to do that, and then everything else will follow. As far as the internships, go to the company websites. In fact, I don't know if you can, I can give you my email address, but you can reach out to me and I can try to guide you. Because I have tips on how to get internships and jobs. I actually have a whole PowerPoint on how to do that. We couldn't do it here, but maybe there'll be ways I can do that.
You're gonna have to do another one.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to do another one. Thank you. Anybody else?
Well, I would add that, expand out your thought of what you want to do for an internship and who you want to intern for. Going to school in Los Angeles, I had the opportunity to intern for what was then Time Warner Cable Sportsnet, which was covering the LA Lakers And even though I was not interested in covering basketball, I knew that I could learn how a TV network like that operates. You know, how do producers put together a pregame show, a postgame show? I also had other internships back here at home with the Pittsburgh Penguins and with Pittsburgh Magazine. I didn't want to be a magazine writer, but I knew that learning their process and meeting the people there would give me new opportunities. So somebody that's going to Rutgers has an incredible amount of opportunity in New York City. It need not be necessarily at, you know, an entertainment network or at one of the local TV stations. You know, look around and see what other businesses and media entities are kind of related to what you want to do, and see if there are opportunities there.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Rebecca.
Yeah, this is a really good one. This person was watching the news last night and saw a journalist being, rushing to get their mask on because, potential chemical agents were being deployed. And they're curious about how do you think about reporting in a time where there is a lot of violence in the culture, where you might actually be on the front lines of that? And do you have, strategies in your individual situations and at your station or along with the union about how to handle that?
Well, I can tell you, taking in my fair share of tear gas, it's part of the job. I mean, they don't really give you gas masks, and the little masks that we wear, for social distancing and all that. This is not going to protect you from the tear gas and stuff. But as far as a strategy, you have to understand, if you're in a covering a protest, that is a possibility. And if you have a gas mask, great, but it's kind of hard to talk on air when you're wearing a gas mask. I've seen people do it, it sounds terrible. But just understand that's part of what we do. And that's part of the danger of the business sometimes. But if you want to do this, then you do it.
There was also
just add, as someone who was tear gas Sunday night, I think the strategy there is honestly therapy, and just talking about it. I think there used to be a time where it was like, this is how it is. And there is some of that, this is how it is. But I think that the more that we talk to one another, and the union, I think, is a great resource for this as well. And the more we talk to our friends that are in the industry, everybody's been through some version of feeling unsafe in the roles of being journalistic. And, you guys mentioned it. I think Gabrielle mentioned it. Not everybody talks about it because everybody loves to hate the media. They don't want to talk about that we're on the front lines as well, risking our lives in a lot of situations. But it is a part of the job. But as the union has told me before, if you feel unsafe somewhere, if someone, is threatening you, you can leave. You don't have to stay. Your life is important. And again, that's something that when you're younger, you have trouble saying no, but sometimes you need to say no, and you need to know that that's okay.
Thank you.
That's great, Nina.
Bob, would you talk a little, just really quickly, because I know we're coming to an end, but we talk about this in the BSC, which is a broadcast steering committee. And it's broadcast reporters from around the country who come together twice a year to talk about the issues, concerns, and challenges that are being faced within the industry of the work that you are doing. And so, and they do talk a lot about safety issues, not just what we're seeing right now, but it's been escalating, unfortunately through the, last this last year and a half, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, these last 4 years, there's been a lot of labeling that's created anxiety and this kind of started changing people's perceptions in a way that's not actually accurate. But Bob, do you want to talk a little bit, just because these are people who are looking to join in the work that you do, can you talk to them about what the Broadcast Steering Committee does so they can understand in some ways what the union's doing to help hear the concerns?
Yeah, the Broadcast Steering Committee is a constitutionally mandated committee that meets 3 times a year. And we talk about issues such as safety. We talk about issues such as new technology and how our members are going to be able to utilize it. and whether or not we should be utilizing it. It's really like an industry trade group. You know, there are a lot of organizations out there that advocate on behalf of its members, and the BSC advocates on behalf of the broadcast members. If you're a student that wants to get into the industry, there are other organizations too that I would look for. NABJ, the Black Journalists Association, is one if you're an African American. Actually, you don't have to be Black to be part of it. It's anybody can join. Same thing with the Hispanic journalists, Asian American journalists, Native American journalists. The Society of Professional Journalists, there are chapters on various campuses around the country. RTDNA, the Digital News Association. These are all organizations that can help you, and also can help you when it comes to safety issues and ethics and journalism. These are all the things that we talk about at the BSC.
Yeah, it's something that I hope everybody who's listening and wants to get involved, I hope they get involved in this business, and then I hope they're able to be a part of the union and ultimately the BSC, because that actually helps to define some of what we try to work through in terms of contracts. We hear what's going on around the country, and little small stations and bigger stations, there's a lot of things that you start to see brewing, and we want to make sure that there's protections built in where we didn't know we didn't need them before, but the industry's changing. So it's a place of real conversation. It's like a think tank. And thank you for sharing that, Bob. And I actually we've gone past time. I don't know. I think that we have to wrap it up now. I want to keep going because we have all these questions. But again, we will try to answer what's here. And Bob, thank you for making yourself a resource to everybody. If you have questions, again, please, ptoe@sagaftra.org. You can share those questions here, but if in terms of the work, you can go to SAG-AFTRA.org. And I just want to say thank you to all of you for being here, sharing your journey. And I'm excited for all the new people who are going to be coming into the industry a little bit wiser with understanding what's needed. So thank you very much.
Gabby, I would say if they want to reach me, they can email PTEOE and it can be forwarded to me.
Great.
And like I said, if you're a college class and you want someone to give you a presentation on getting a job, I actually have a PowerPoint that I do, and several people have seen it, and it's fun, but it's also very informative.
Thank you so much. Thank you for always being out there, Bob, being open to everybody. Anyway, thank you all, and we'll see you later. Take care of yourselves.
Thanks, everybody.